my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got a quick paranormal video to share with you guys. And today we're going to be talking about the Ferry Plantation house in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Now, the site where this house sits has history dating back into the 1600s. And when you look it up on Wikipedia, the site has this to say about the house. It says the Ferry Plantation house, or Old Donation Farm, Ferry Farm, Wake Manor House, is a brick house in the neighborhood of Old Donation Farm, Virginia Beach, in Virginia Beach, Virginia. The site dates back to 1642, when Saville Gaskin started the second ferry service in Lynnhaven River to the nearby county courthouse and to visit plantations along the waterway. A cannon was used to signal the ferry, which had 11 total stops along the river. The first ferry service was started nearby by Adam Thorogood. So it says the house has been used as a plantation, courthouse, school, and post office. It is currently a museum and educational center. So that's just a little bit of history there about the house. Now, what's really interesting to me, and in terms of this video about the house, is that there are reportedly many spirits that are inside this house. On the lower end of the guess, 11. Who knows how many there actually are. So I thought it'd be interesting just to sort of talk about a few of these ghosts today. And then I really want to focus on one woman who lived in the house and the way that her legacy is sort of still affecting the area. Now, the main sort of tribe of ghosts that most often get described and brought up by people who visit the house, because while it is temporarily closed right now, usually in the summertime you can go, have a mini tour, learn about the history. It's only $10 and the guide will take you around. I believe you can also stay there if you wish. There are multiple investigation videos on YouTube of people staying in the house and investigating it. And, you know, of course, for investigation videos, you really have to take it with a grain of salt, just in case, you know, those videos could be staged. But based on what I've seen, there's definitely seems to be a lot of activity in this house. Now, let's get into the ghosts. So first of all, apparently back when the ferry was running, there was a shipwreck, and some of the passengers of that boat have been reported to have been seen around, in and around the Ferry Plantation house. Next up, for the ghosts whose names are known, is, the first one is Henry, and he was a slave who was born at the house on the grounds. And even after he was freed, he still remained at the house up until he was in his 80s. I don't know for sure if he died there as well, but yeah, he spent his entire life, at least up until his 80s, at this house. And apparently his spirit is often seen. And from what I've read in the research that I've done, I've heard a couple of people say that Henry has spoken to them. So that's very interesting. Next are Charles and Isabel McIntosh, and these are former owners of the house. Charles died when Isabel was pregnant, and his spirit remained. And then after Isabel passed as well, so did hers. And their story is actually very sad and very tragic because, like I said, Charles passed when Isabel was pregnant, so she had the baby. They lived at the house, and the baby was a little girl, and her name was Bessie. But unfortunately, the day after Bessie turned 5 years old, she passed away. And people most reportedly see and feel and hear her spirit when they're in the upstairs nursery in the house. Next up, there's Eric. He's a young boy who likes to play in and around the property. It seems to be a more playful spirit, one that just likes to have a bit of fun. And then there's a woman named Angie. She used to be a nanny back during slavery times. She was a nanny who would care for the children of the slaves while they were busy. Cora and Stella were a couple of sisters who lived in the house. Then there's a ghost which has become known as Chloe, but there's really nothing known about her. She's kind of just an unknown spirit. Nobody knows any of her story or anything like that. I also heard about a spirit named Sally. I think her name was Sally. And she waited out the Civil War at that house. And eventually, as time went by, she got word that her boyfriend was killed in the war. And when she heard that, she went outside and planted a tree on the property in his memory. And that tree is now big and strong and still stands there to this day. That's such an interesting history, I find. Now, the final one that I really wanted to mention is a woman named Grace Sherwood. She was a healer who lived on the property. She was an herbalist, a midwife. She spent a lot of time dedicating her life to helping others. Now, unfortunately, a lot of those qualities back in the day would lead people to thinking that you were a witch. And, you know, she knew how to use nature, to take nature and use the perfect things that already exist. She knew how to take them, identify them, and use them to help heal. Even simple things like ginger for an upset stomach, or certain plants to use, you know, to turn into salve and use on cuts and scrapes. All those things that, you know, now today we think is so wonderful. Back then it would make people think you were a witch. So here's a little bit of history that I found about Grace Sherwood. It says, Grace Sherwood, the daughter of a carpenter and the wife of a planter in the county of Princess Anne, was accused by her neighbors of witchcraft. Excuse me, your neighbors? Apparently, legend has it as well that Grace was very beautiful, and that led a lot of people to not like her, and it made them quicker to jump on the whole witchcraft bandwagon. Grace was tried in the Second Princess Anne courthouse, found guilty, and consented to the traditional trial by water, which is absolute insanity. So what they would do is they would submerge you in water, and if you bobbed to the top, that convinced them that you were a witch, because of the way that they looked at it, the purity of the water was rejecting the evil of the witch. So, at Witch Duck Point, July 10th, 1706, at 10 a.m., Grace was tied, cross-bound, and dropped into water above a man's depth. If she were to sink and drown, she was innocent and could be buried on church grounds. If she floated, the pure water was casting out her evil spirit. There you go. Grace was able to unbound herself and swim to the surface. Once ashore, she was examined for witch marks. A jury of women finds 2 marks, and she was imprisoned. After 7 years, she was finally released. Grace paid the back taxes owned on her property in 1714, returning to her farm and working the land until her death at age 80 in the autumn of 1740. Grace Sherwood was the only convicted witch ever tried by water in the state of Virginia. Her legend gives claim to the name Witch Duck Road, in which is now Virginia Beach. And then it says, Belinda Nash, the Ferry Plantation founder, petitioned 3 governors for over 20 years to have Grace Sherwood formally exonerated. On July 10th, 2006, at 10 a.m., 300 years to the day, Grace's good name was restored by Governor Timothy Kane. A bronze statue of Grace Sherwood, sculpted by Robert G. Cunningham, now sits in front of the Centara Independence Hospital in Virginia Beach. So I think that's so interesting. Can you imagine, though? And if you're interested, let me know in the comments down below, and I can do a more in-depth video about Grace Sherwood, because I find her story so interesting. So do let me know that down in the comments. Maybe during Halloween I'll do a video going more in depth on a few different women who were accused of being witches. And yeah, at this point, I guess the best you can say is at least she wasn't burned for being a witch. She was only imprisoned. But my goodness. And like, so if they do the trial by water and you sink and drown, you're innocent. And they're like, oh, good for you. You can be buried in the church cemetery. That is absolute insanity. And it's so scary to just think, like, you just have to rub someone the wrong way. They get it in their mind you're a witch, and then it's pretty much all over for you. Thank goodness things aren't like that anymore. Very scary. But yeah, so let me know if you'd be interested in hearing more about Grace. And I also read as well that on the property of the Ferry Plantation house, once a year they reenact her trial. So very interesting. Yeah, that's gonna do it for me for today. I just wanted to hop on here because I found this house and Grace in particular so interesting. I hope you guys are having a great week, and I will see you on Friday. Bye.